First of all, thanks for the invitation. And I already had the opportunity to work with the teams here throughout the day, so that was a lot of fun. And I don't think you're fucked from what I've seen today, right? But indeed, other places, there's some issues to be settled. So I'm going to talk about business models, more specifically business model design, and how you can design the powerful business models of tomorrow. So if you look at the title, From Business Plan to Business Models, the idea here is that business plans are gone. Who of you has ever written a business plan? So most of you have wasted your time. Because, in the words of Steve Blank, who's already mentioned before, no business plan survives the first contact with customers. So what you really want to focus on is not a planning document, but you want to focus on the business model that's going to change throughout an entrepreneurial journey, if you're a startup, or an intrapreneurial journey, if you're building growth engines in a big company. And you have at least one very big company very close to you, right? So, who of you is from more of the startup field? So, a traditional startup entrepreneur in a startup? Okay. Who of you comes from a big company? Okay, a couple of you. Who comes from the government? Okay. Social, yeah, who's unemployed? We won't do the coming out now. Social ventures, hands up. Social entrepreneurship. Okay, my girl in the back just raised her hand. I'm here with my family. I had an opportunity to go through Finland for a week, which is very beautiful. I was on vacation, my first work day again today. So I'm going to talk about business models and how you design them. And I consider it torture to listen to anybody for more than 20 minutes, which I did a little bit this morning in the afternoon, so a little bit of torture today. But I'm going to get you to work. I want, even if we're so many, I want you to participate. Might be a little bit of a challenge for some of the exercises, for some of them won't, so this is not going to happen. And if you came to listen, fine, but you're going to have to work also, okay? So no chance to escape. Now, I was wondering how I could start, and I have a habit now of starting with the story of the business model book that you've just seen. If you can take one here. It's called Business Model Generation, and we've done a couple of things differently with this book. We broke out of the traditional publishing model, and I'll tell you this story of the book before we dive into the matter of business models. So, let's look at this book. You can find actually one quarter of the book for free online, Business Model Generation. You can download 70 pages. If you like it, you can get the rest of the book. If you don't like it, well, you got 70 pages for free. Now let's look at the publishing industry, because when we started this book, I finished my PhD, my doctoral dissertation on business models, and it was then called, I wrote something called the Business Model Ontology. Okay, ontology is basically what gives you the title of a doctor, gets any business person to run away, so now we call it differently, a business model canvas. But together with my co-author Yves Pigneur, who was my PhD supervisor, we thought we're onto something. The method that we created in my research is something valuable that people could use around the world. So we decided to write a bestseller. We said we want to write a management bestseller. 2 no-name authors out of Switzerland, from a good school in Switzerland. I was then an academic, I left academia. But not from Stanford, Harvard, or whatever, not from Altos, whatever top Ivy League schools. But still we had this ambition to write a bestseller. Not because we wanted to, cruise up there and travel the world, but because we thought these ideas are relevant. Now, let's look at the publishing industry, and let's look at business books. Well, first, if you take English books in general, every year, 1 million books are published, or self-published. 1 million. That's a pretty competitive industry, isn't it? 1 million competing products. Of those 1 million, 11,000 are business books. So guess what? Here come 2 Swiss and say, we want to write a management bestseller. Nobody was waiting for 11,001. Okay, nobody. But still we believed we could do it. But obviously you have to do something differently if you want to compete in a space like that. And it's even worse because if you look at sales, book sales in major retail chains, from 2007 to 2009, 12% of the market were disappearing. So visualize, that means these are all the books being sold to retail. 12% go up in flames, just disappeared. And still we thought we're going to write a bestseller in a declining market. So what did we do? What would you do if you want to write a management bestseller? What would you do? What do you think? What could be some ideas? Just call them in, yell them in. What could we do?
Write it with Gary Hamel.
Write it with a famous author already. So probably one of the leading business management authors of the time. Anything else? Okay. Now, who has read a business book, management book, cover to cover in the last 6 months? Cover to cover. Wow. Masochists. Who thinks business books today, even if there's interesting content, they're pretty broken. There's a lot of things that you don't like about business books today. Okay? So some of the things that are broken is there's too much text. Right? You could cut out probably 80%. I see some people nodding. There's too much text. There's no images, no visuals, right? Now, talking about relatively complex issues like business models where you have several elements interacting, new competitive environments with globalization, if you don't use visuals, you're just not using the means of communications that we have today to convey complex concepts. So, text-heavy books, why is it so? Because that's how book printing machines used to run. You couldn't make images. Today you can. Still, publishers don't make visual business books. So what did we do? First thing we did is we changed the product. The book is highly visual, not just to put lipstick on the pig, as you might say, but to convey concepts, because business concepts should be more visual. We'll see, we'll go into that a little bit. We'll look at the approach that's at the heart of this. So this is how the book looks. We made it very visual. We made it more emotional, because when you're in entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, you want to see people, you want to relate to those kind of things. Now, how many emotional business books do you know, right? We wanted to make them very hands-on, and we wanted to make them also an aesthetic product. So you would not just buy it for the business book, but you would want the product. This kind of unboxing experience that you get from some companies in Cupertino, okay? So, this is how the book looks. But then, there's more to it. Just changing the product is one thing, but you know, when you publish a book, you need a publisher. So, would a publishing house have let us do this? Make this crazy kind of visual book with emotional aspects and making it hands-on? No chance. Because that's not what publishers do. So we decided to not look for a publisher, and we wouldn't have found a top publisher anyways. Harvard Business School Press wouldn't have taken us on, for sure. So we said we're going to self-publish, but we're going to change the business model in the process in a way that it will help us create a bestseller, in addition to the product differentiation that you just saw. So we said, let's do business model innovation for a book about business model innovation. First thing we did is we decided to co-create, to write the book with people from around the world. Anybody in the room who's participated in the book project? Okay. My kids again raising their hands. Yes, you did. They drew the pictures, that's why it's visual. Okay, but some raised your hands, right? Why did we do this? Because we wanted practitioners to participate and to share their experience, because that's what's relevant today, the concepts and the experience of those people who apply the concepts. That was the first aspect. Now, co-creating on the internet, sending out parts of the book, getting feedback, that's not innovative as such. So we thought, let's make it really innovative. Let's get them to pay. So here come two Swiss no-name authors. We say, we want to write a management bestseller. So you've never heard of me before. I might come to you and say, I want to write a bestseller. Can you give me your credit card information and pay me $24 and you're able to participate? Would you do that? She's smiling, very gentle. She basically means, are you crazy? But in fact, because we figured out what people wanted, they wanted to be part of a project like this. They wanted to be part of a potential bestseller. There's no guarantee, but hey, it's pretty exciting to be part of this. And people wanted to learn more about business models in a community of practitioners. So basically, we had 100 people joining very quickly, so we raised the price. Call this inverse marketing or inverse pricing. We raised the price 50%. People joined, we raised the price 50%. People joined, we raised the price 50%. Then we had 470 people. You don't get rich by doing this, but you can pre-finance some of this stuff. So we paid the designer with this money. And then 3 days before sending the book to the printer, we said, hey, you want your name in the book? This is your chance. Pay us $250. And some crazy Americans, not crazy Finns, they actually paid $250 just to have their name in the book. So if you look at the book now, the first pages is full of the 470 co-authors of the book who joined this project. And now, pretty funny, it is actually a management bestseller, and they participated in it, and they can prove it because they have their name in the book. Okay, results. In many airport stores, it was top for a while, #1 business book. It's the top 10 softcover business book in the US. 170,000 copies in print. That's big for publishing. It's small in the internet terms, but that's pretty big. And 19 translations coming out this year and the beginning of next year. All that, I think, because we changed the business model and we got people to join and we did things differently. So, more importantly, what we wrote about in the book is spreading like fire. Because changing your business model, figuring out how to do that is a hot topic. And it's a hot topic in companies and organizations around the world. Ranging from big organizations to startups, to governments and social ventures. Because that's where competition is taking place. It's not about product innovation anymore. That's yesterday's game. In tomorrow's game, product innovation is a commodity. What you really want to be able to do is add a powerful business model to your products. Because it's the business model that enables your products, okay? So, my favorite example, startup entrepreneur, Zulu Nation, came to me by, again, co-creation, somebody sent it, from South Africa, a Zulu Nation warrior armed with business model generation. Hey, that's your next competitor. Now, let's dive into the topic. Let's start. My girl already left, she already told me before, Daddy, I don't want to come, it's going to be boring. My boy's still here. So, let's go into the depth of the issue, and then very soon I'm going to get you to work. So I'm going to take you in a Swiss invention, the time machine. Swiss invented the time machine, and I'm going to take you to 1958. I'm going to introduce you to a person who I learned about through Henry Chesbrough, a friend of mine teaching at Berkeley on open innovation and open business models. He introduced me to Chester Carlson, who was working for a company called Halloween in 1958. He was basically head of a research team that invented the first modern-day photocopy machine. Okay? Now, what's interesting here is, this machine could make 2,000 copies a day at a time where the existing technology could make 15 to 30 copies. So a big jump. It did something that people were not really used to. But the problem with this was that the technology was about 7 to 8 times more expensive. So they didn't really know what to do. So Halloween went to the consultants, they went to Arthur D. Little, and they asked them, hey, what should we do? You have this great product. What do you think the consultants told them? We're in 1958, you have this great technology, and it does something that people haven't seen, and it's really expensive. What do you think Arthur D. Little told them? What would your guess be? What would your guess be?
Sell it to NASA.
Sell it to?
NASA.
To NASA, okay, that's a good business model.
There's no market for it.
That's exactly what they said. They said, hey, nobody's going to buy this. There's no market, or if there is, it's too small. So they said, basically, you should shelf the technology. Now, Halloween didn't listen. Good for them. they went back to the drawing board and they tried to figure out a business model to make this work. And basically, they came up with the model that's dominating photocopying today, right? So let's say we're in 1958, you're managing the operations of a big European company, and I come to you and I say, hey, look, we got this great technology. You don't want to buy it, it's too expensive. But you can lease it for $95 a month, okay? We'll do everything, you just lease it, and you get 2,000 copies for free per month. Sounds interesting, right? If you make a couple of more copies, you have to pay a couple of cents per additional photocopy. But it should cover your need. You don't make that many copies, right? Interesting? Okay. So many companies jumped onto this, so they got the product in the market. And then what happened is that people started photocopying like crazy. They didn't photocopy 2,000 times a month. They copied 2,000 times a day, which basically means that Halloween, which became Xerox, started earning on the additional cents per copy from day 2 onwards till the end of the month. And they had amazing growth rates through that new business model. Okay? So a strategy to bring the product to the market and then earn it a different way. Something that hasn't been done until then. It was totally new. So that was the first example. Second example, we'll go to 1997. And I'll introduce you to 2 guys who you probably know. Okay? What did they invent or popularize? The first modern-day search engine. Now, did they have the same problem? A product that was too expensive? Contrary. Their product was not too expensive. It was free. How do you earn money from free? How do you earn money from free? Well, they did. Today, basically, based on a free product, free search that you and I do, they're earning from contextualized advertising, selling off the search terms to advertising. They earn 30 billion US dollars. Most of it still coming from search. And because, not just because they found this advertising revenue stream, but they found a particular pricing mechanism where they auction off the search terms. So if you want to have the search term Nike in Helsinki, you're going to compete against others who are going to bid on that term. And only the highest bidder gets his or her advertising to appear. That became basically a machine to print money, right? So, 2 examples. What do they have in common? What do both examples have in common? If you compare them, similarities. I know Finns, most of you are Finns, are not very outgoing. Some are smiling. But I'm going to get you to work, so this is a chance to warm up already.
The models didn't exist.
The models didn't exist before. They had to invent them, correct? What else? Yep.
They had the best technologies.
They had the best technology, so there was clearly technology innovation. Was that the only type of innovation?
Pricing innovation.
Pricing innovation, revenue innovation, right? Business model innovation. I'll give you 3 points, and those 3 points are important for the rest of what I'm talking about. And it'll give us the structure for the hour we're going to be together. The first one is that, yes, there was technology and product innovation. Fine, and it was important. But it was not sufficient. That alone was not enough. So in both cases, they figured out a business model to enable or empower the product. And we'll see this more and more. These are two extreme cases. But it's the business model in these 2 cases that enables the product. Okay? That's the first point, first big idea. Second big idea here is that they didn't copy. Now, how many of us, the first thing we do is we look out there, we look at our competition. Who's guilty of that? Looks at competition pretty frequently, right? Who cares about competition? What you really want to do is invent a business model that solves a particular job for a customer. That's the ultimate goal. Of course, you're going to compete not in a vacuum, but in a competitive space. But ultimately, you want to invent business models that solve jobs for customers. Not just products, but business models. Okay? It's the second big idea. The third big idea is going to be the last part of the talk, is, well, could they prove up front that the business models would succeed? No chance. Right? You cannot prove that the business model is going to work. We're finding ways now to understand if they could work. You cannot prove up front. So in big companies, what's the first thing, the first question you get when you present a new business model idea? Prove that it works, right?
Exactly. Show me someone who's done it before.
Yeah, right. It's the worst thing you can do. If somebody's done it, why do you want to do it again? Right? So we need to get back to a culture of experimentation. Experimentation, not just of products, but experimentation of business models, because it's by experimenting and failing that we learn and that will build powerful business models. Follow me on this? Third point. So this is going to be our structure. First part, how do you go beyond product innovation? So we're going to look at what's a business model, what's that construct? Second point, so this is business models as a language. Second point, well, if we don't copy, what do? Hey, we create stuff. So we're going to look into the design world, design thinking attitude. Design is a profession that creates stuff every day. That's how you go beyond copying. And the third part, I'll be very brief on this. You're going to have Steve to talk, Steve Blank. How do you go beyond this asking for proof? How can you try to sense if a business model is going to work or not without actually having the data? So this is where we go towards testing business models before we build them. So in the old world, here I'm a bit black and white, in the old world we make a business plan, we try to show what's going to be the case, get funding, we fail, the VC is angry, and we start the next company. In the new world, you're going to have to iterate your business model and prove to your investors that you're learning from every failure and that you can still change your business model because you didn't spend all the money. And once you've figured it out, that's when you build it. Okay? Searching before building. Good. 3 points. Now, I'm going to get you to work. It's a very simple thing. You're going to look at business models. Hey, what is a business model? Who of you has never ever used the term business model? Hands up. Okay, my boy in the back again. So, want you to work on this topic of business models. Since you've all used the word, you know what a business model is. So we're going to take a case. Simple case. Coffee, commodities business. And frankly, after a week in Finland, you need a little bit of innovation when it comes to coffee. Okay? So let's look at this commodities business where some coffee growers like Vietnam didn't exist 10 years ago. Now they're among the biggest coffee growers, so there's quite a bit of supply now, okay? Now, let's start with this question and just ask ourselves, this is for many markets, I just have some data points on the Swiss market. How much less or more do Swiss households pay for coffee consumption if we look at, compared to the 5 years ago? Do we pay 20% less per gram of coffee, or do we pay 20% more? What would your guesses be? What would you guess be? What do you think?
Much less.
Much less, okay? Commodities business. How much would you guess? How much would you guess? How much less?
25%?
85%?
No, 25.
25%, okay?
40% more.
40% more, okay. Other direction, yeah? You said more in the front?
300.
300% more. Wow, commodities business, 300% more?
About the same.
Okay? It's 600 to 800% more that we pay for coffee. And the Swiss do not throw money out of the window. So why the heck are we paying 6 to 8 times more per gram of coffee? It's not George Clooney, right? It's espresso. Okay? So, Nespresso, which is part of Nestlé, one of the biggest food, the biggest food company in the world, came up with a business model for espresso. And they basically changed the business model for selling espresso. Okay? At least parts of it. Now, at the heart of Nespresso, the company Nespresso, is a machine, coffee machine, Nespresso. And to make a good espresso, Now, let me explain to you, Finns, what a good espresso is. It's when you have a black mass, but you can't see that black mass because there's a beautiful crema on top of the coffee that stays there for more than 10 seconds. And that gives you this special taste. So they made a machine, they were the first to invent this type of machine, where you take an aluminum pod with coffee inside, you put it into the machine, you press a button, and out comes a great espresso, like as if you were in a coffee bar in Milano, okay? That's the product. What I want you to work on for, let's say, 3 minutes in groups of 2 with your seat neighbor is, well, that's the product, but what's the business model that got them to these results that we're going to see? First aspect, hey, they sell so many pods that every Swiss village has a garbage collection site just for Nespresso pods. Okay? It's the only company with their own container. It's still one of the fastest growing businesses within Nestlé, has a growth rate of about 30% per annum for the last 11 years. Okay, that's substantial for most companies. I presented this at Google and they looked at me, 30%, that's it? But hey, Nestlé is a big company with much lower growth rates, right? And even for most startups, after a while, that's still pretty good. And it represents about 3 billion Swiss francs annual revenues with one product line. It's a bit more now, okay? One product line, coffee machines and the pods, some other stuff, but that's the main product line. So I want you to figure out with your seat neighbor, what are the core elements that allowed Nespresso to be so successful? So what's the business model about? 3 minutes with your seat neighbor, let's go. What's Nespresso's business model? Okay? Okay, fine. Let's do this together. So, just a couple of pointers. What do you think made Nespresso so successful when it comes to their business model? What will your guess be?
They sell this lifestyle product that you get this great coffee fast, and without realizing it, the customer gets totally lost.
Okay, so you had lifestyle experience. Okay, and you said lock-in. What do you mean exactly with the lock-in?
Well, because I got fooled by this thing, so I can't buy any other things than the Nescafe capsules anymore. And the idea basically was that they offer 3 packets of capsules for free if you buy from the internet.
Okay.
And they had posting costs of mailing costs of 11 euros. But if you bought with over 80 euros, you could skip the mailing cost. So I had to buy half a year's coffee.
Okay, and once you have the machine, there's not many other pods that you can use, right? Okay, what else? Yeah, in the back?
I think they changed the comparable product. They're selling cheap coffee house experience rather than expensive homemade coffee.
Okay, so a focus on the experience again, that you could actually have the home barista experience, yeah?
Exactly, and focus on the cost of, essentially the cost comparable is the cost of espresso, which is modest, and you cannot see how much coffee you're actually buying.
Okay, so they created a new market in that sense, yeah? Other aspects, what's powerful about their business model, what do you think? Yep.
Well, actually it's the best product, because without the best product, whatever you do,
okay,
cannot be the best.
it's the best product, fine, okay, so very powerful product. They were the first actually to invent this, it looks easy, it's a pretty sophisticated machine, yeah?
They copied the Xerox and console market business model.
Okay, in what sense did they copy it?
The machine is cheap, but the capsules are.
Okay, because you don't realize you pay small sums again and again and again, okay? What's crucial in that kind of model? So we had this twice, right? You mentioned lock-in. You mentioned, okay, once you have the machine, it's like the Xerox model or the printer model where you buy these cartridges again. What's essential in that type of business model? What do you need to be able to do that? Somebody said, what? What do you need to be able to do that? Something that is crucial to allow you to do that over years.
People have the basic need for it.
Why can't I just make pods for that machine and sell them much cheaper?
Strong IPR protection.
IP protection, patents on the pods in the machine, right? So yes, it's this kind of lock-in business model, but you can only do that if you have another aspect in your business model, which is owning the patents to do that, right? Okay, that's one aspect. Other aspects? Anyone? Yeah, last one, yeah.
You can buy a machine in any shop, but you cannot buy your capsules everywhere.
Sorry?
You can buy your machine anywhere in any shop, but not the capsules. So it's
Okay, why would they do that? Why do they allow you to buy the machine everywhere, but not the capsules? Doesn't that sound strange? You can buy the machines in retail, but not the capsules. Why not? Where can you buy the capsules?
Only in Nespresso shop.
Only in the Nespresso shop. So why do they do that? Why do they limit their reach? Are they silly?
Exclusive.
It's exclusive. Okay. What else? For those of you who don't know the story yet.
The coffee machine isn't the product. The coffee is.
Okay.
They can control the whole chain.
But hey, why wouldn't they, you know, they don't want the reach of retail chains to sell as many pods as possible? Why won't they do that?
Because they can control the whole chain by themselves.
Okay, why would they want to control the whole chain?
More revenue for them.
More revenue because
There is no like extra hand.
there's no intermediary, so the entire margin goes to them. Because basically, once you got the machine, you don't have a choice. You can only buy Nespresso pods. So why not just sell them on the internet and earn all the money yourself rather than giving some to retail? Because it's very convenient to order again and again over the internet. So we'll go into that, but I want to leave it there. So nobody complained, hey, what's a business model before sketching this out? So tell me please, Buzz Group, what is a business model? You had no problem starting to talk about the business model of Nespresso. What is, again, with your seat neighbor, what actually is a business model? Take a minute or two, max, and discuss with your seat neighbor what a business model is, and write down your definition. Since nobody complained you don't know what a business model is, this shouldn't be much of an issue, okay? 2 minutes. What's a business model? Let's go. Write down your definition. So, I ask this question everywhere in the world. Every crowd I talk to almost, except if they know my work already, I ask them, what is a business model? Because it's a word we use pretty often, right? Now, so what is a business model? What are some of the definitions that you came up with? Now everybody's going to run away with that word, ontological approach, okay? What is a business model?
It's the flow of stuff through the business.
Okay, flow of stuff through the business. Okay, Facebook, what's the stuff that flows through the business? Could be conversations, okay? So flow of stuff through the business. What else? Yeah, in the back maybe?
How do you make and sell your stuff profitably?
How do you make and sell your stuff profitably? Okay, another definition, slightly different, yeah? Anybody have a very different one? Yeah?
It's a description of your value creation logic in your business.
Okay, so here we had some different parts. Description, value creation logic. Okay, what's value creation logic? Okay, yeah.
I can add to that it also might include some kind of a look to your business system. How do you construct the business?
Okay, so we're hearing another word, system. There's always a bit, you know, defining business model with business system.
But yeah, what I meant,
Just joking, no, but yeah, we're staying in this fluffy space, okay, yeah.
It's the process of discovering what problem you're addressing and how.
Okay. So basically there's no right and wrong. So there is no natural law that says this is a business model and this is not. But what's the bigger problem here is that we use this word in conversations and we're not always clear about what we mean. Some talk about the value creation logic, some talk about the way the product is distributed, some about the revenue model, some about a system. And all of it is right, because basically it means something to you, but the problem is when two people don't have the same understanding, they're speaking a different language, this is what you get. The Tower of Babel, where everybody has a different definition and means something else. So this is where we land. You have a definition here, I have a definition here, but it's not the same. Well, guess what? When we're going to have a conversation, we just agreed on the term, but not really on the content. So we're not going to understand each other. And this is a phenomenon you see everywhere around the world. Sound familiar? That, you know, when you ask somebody what is a business model, it's not so clear. Okay? And now imagine a meeting of 5 people. Take a big company. It's just fun to make fun of big companies. You have a meeting where somebody says, let's say the business division manager says, we need to reinvent our business model. Or even better, the CEO says, we need to reinvent our business model. So here you have the CFO, the chief financial officer, the chief operating officer. You might have somebody from IT, from design, whatever. And somebody says, we need to reinvent the business model. So this is how it goes. First one guy, blah, 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 blah. Second person says, blah, 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 blah. And guess what you have after 3 hours? People are still talking about how to reinvent business models, but it's pretty much blah, 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 blah. Because we're stuck in the world of blah, blah, blah. This is an upcoming book of a friend of mine, Dan Rome, who wrote Back of the Napkin. It's coming out in November. And he talks about exactly about this phenomenon. We think we understand each other, but we don't. Because we're just using words rather than just visuals and a shared visual language. So to break out of this world of blah, 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 we need visual constructs and languages to help us. And this is what we're going to look at for business models. So definitely a book I would recommend. I had the opportunity to look at a preprint, and we had a chat just about 2-3 weeks ago in San Francisco. And this is relevant. In your business, you want to use more visual tools to break out of that blah, blah, blah. I actually drew that picture, this one here, in the airplane after reading Dan's book. Okay? So what we tried to figure out when I started my research with Yves Pigneur is how could we create a shared language to describe business models and basically to invent better or new business models. And what we came up with, we dropped the word ontology, because that's a dangerous word, gets people to run away, and we now call it the business model canvas. Why did we use the word canvas? Because it's important to visualize a business model, to sketch it out. You sketch out an existing business model, just like a snapshot, a picture, to make it clear. But if you take it out of the world of blah, 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 you put it in a visual way on the wall, it's clear to everybody because you're discussing an artifact. That's just for an existing business model. But when you're talking about new business models that nobody has done, you better sketch it out because otherwise nobody's going to understand you. So who of you has been in a situation where somebody tried to explain their business model to you, and after 5 minutes, you still haven't really understood what they're talking about? Who's been in that situation? Right? All the time, because we're stuck in the world of blah, blah, blah. And this is not because we're not intelligent, it's just because we don't use the right tools. Okay? Because we're talking about smart people here. So we came up with this language, and visual language, to describe and challenge and invent business models more systematically. So, what's this about? 9 building blocks. So who knows, who already knew about the business model canvas? Hands up. Okay. Okay, fine. I'll run you through it quickly, but even with the teams I worked with this afternoon, I saw there's some interesting things to focus on. So let's take customer segments. Let's take the Financial Times, easy example. What are the customer segments of the Financial Times? Subscribers and advertisers, just 2, right? You have all the readers and the job to be done for the readers, and the advertisers and the job to be done for the advertisers. And for both, you have a different value proposition. So, trivial start. But already here, many companies fail to sketch out the value proposition for each customer segment. So take a pharmaceutical company. They have many different users and customers. People who use the medicine, doctors, payers, governments, insurances. They cannot describe the value proposition or the job they're getting done for each customer segment. But that's substantial. You want to be able to do that because all those customer segments are important for your business model. So just if you take Google, 2 customer segments. Users are a customer segment even if they never pay. Why? Because you're competing for their attention. to get them to your platform, you need to have a powerful value proposition, which is going to cost you money. Doesn't mean because they're not paying, you don't have a value proposition to them. You're just cross-subsidizing that value proposition through the money that you get from advertisers, okay? So, then the channels, how you reach companies, that's pretty straightforward. Companies or customers. And then customer relationships. So this is one, even if you know the canvas, is sometimes a bit of an issue. Who's had problems with figuring out, you know the business model canvas, but you have problems with this aspect of customer relationships. You don't really understand exactly. Okay? A couple of you are honest. What you really want to figure out is what type of relationship you're establishing with your customer segments. If you're a Geneva-based private bank, you're going to have a personal relationship based on a banker that's going to entertain a personal, long-term relationships over decades, maybe over generations. Okay? That has consequences on the business model. It's a non-scalable business model, and it's something that takes time to build up. Let's take Amazon. Who's bought from Amazon, let's say the last 6 months on Amazon? Okay. What kind of customer relationship does Amazon have with you? Is it a personal relationship? It is? How so? They know a lot of what you buy. They store that data, so they're going to recommend books to you. So it's not personal, but it's personalized, but it's automated. It's based on a system that's going to recommend stuff to you. So it's personalized, but automated, which has different consequences on the business model. Do they have a transactional relationship with you or a long-term? What do you say? Transactional or long-term? You're doubting, huh? Long-term. Very long-term, because most of us have bought from Amazon regularly over the last 5, 6, 10 years, right? So they actually establish a long-term personalized relationship, and that has consequences on the business model. Then you want to talk about the revenue streams, but not just the revenue streams, also the pricing mechanism. So what I told you about Google, yes, it's advertising, but what's powerful is the auctioning off of the search terms. That's what's powerful here. Now, I usually call this the front stage of your business model, like a theater. Your customers are the people coming to the theater. Everything here on this side, on the front stage, is what they see. They see what they're getting, they see how you're reaching them, they see what you're asking them for, what you have to pay. Okay? That's the front stage. But like in a theater, to make the front stage possible, you need a backstage. That's where the infrastructure comes in. Now, when you go to the theater to watch a play, do you care about the backstage? Okay, depends on who's on stage, right? If it's George Clooney, okay, maybe. But do you generally care about the backstage? Of course not, right? But the backstage is relevant to make this happen. Problem is, companies often misunderstand the backstage from the front stage. The things that they do in their company, they think that's really important, but customers don't care about what you do. What they care about is the front stage. But to make this play possible, you need both, front stage and backstage. So backstage, what are the things that we need to have? The key resources. What is essential to make our business model work? Do we need factories? Do we need a brand? Do we need intellectual property? Do we need people? Every business model has people, but only in some business models, people are really key. Follow me on this? If you're in product innovation, people are going to be key. If you're DHL, people are not going to make the big difference, okay? In your business model. Follow me on this? It's an important point. Then you want to ask yourself, what is it that you do? What are the key activities? And with who are you doing this? Which partners can leverage your business model? So the example I like to bring here is Zynga. Who's heard of Zynga? Hands up. Okay, social gaming company. They go, usually when they launch a new game, they go from 0 to 9, 10 million users very quickly, a very short time span. 1 month, 2 months. Now, how can they scale so quickly? It's because they accepted that they're not going to build that scale themselves, but they're going to build on top of Facebook. So Facebook has become a partner that has allowed them to leverage their business model. Okay, so what you want to figure out is who are the partners that can make your business model infinitely more powerful. And sometimes, you know, it can be very painful, like this relationship, Zynga, Facebook, they had to learn how to work together. Once you know that, very quickly you know the cost structure. So 9 elements that describe your business model. Now, is any individual element here up here new to you? Of course not, because you wouldn't be sitting here. Now, still, very rarely do we focus on the big picture. We still focus too much on just product innovation. What's the new product? What are the new segments that we're going to target? Or what are the different channels? And maybe a bit of course, how we're earning money. But what you really want to do is you want to question, challenge your business model and build powerful business models beyond product innovation. So typically in Nespresso, there's a product in the middle. It's an innovative product, but they changed the business model. And let's look at that by using the canvas not in its conceptual form, but as a tool. Okay? So turning the concept in a tool where you can start sketching out your business model. And the visual aspect here, putting a poster on the wall, working on the wall with the team, putting up your post-it notes, that's what takes you out of the world of blah, 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 into a world of visuals. And we'll see why that is so relevant. Okay? So that's what you want to do, because it's very difficult to then, once you, with your team, you came up with one business model, you described it that way, to come back to it and say, oh, I didn't say that. Well, why is it up here then? Why did we put that up as the key customer segment? Why did we talk about those channels? Because you're getting out of the world of blah, 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 and describing your business model. So, illustration, then I'll get you to work again. Nespresso. So, I asked you what the business model is. I'll show you how I would sketch it out very quickly. First one is, well, it's a product composed of the machine and the pods. So, let's look at the first part. Nespresso machines are sold through all retail outlets to households. So you correctly mentioned that. Somebody said, well, you can find them everywhere. And the sales of the Nespresso machines is what earns them some money, but most of it goes back to machine manufacturers. When it comes to the pods, they made the strategic decision to only sell the pods through their own channels. First mail order, then call center, then Nespresso.com, and then they started building Nespresso stores. By selling through their own channels, as we said before, they keep the entire margin of the Nespresso pod sales, right? And basically because you're locked in, they don't need to sell through retail, because once you have the machine, well, you have no choice. Now, why do you think they had the Nespresso.com? They sold most of their stuff through Nespresso.com, the pods. Why then did they start to set up Nespresso stores in some of the most expensive locations of the world? Champs-Élysées, where you can go smell the coffee altar. You go, ah, that's a good coffee. They have literally a coffee altar. Okay. I know I need to educate you a little bit on coffee. Some work to do there. But why do they build these stores? And I think you don't have an espresso store in Helsinki. You do? Okay. You should go there and smell the coffee altar. Okay. Why do they do that?
I think they want to position themselves as a luxury product.
Okay. So that's exactly it. They want to position themselves at the high end. To position yourself at the high end without having your own stores, without having a physical presence, is very hard to do. So the Nespresso stores are very costly, and that's definitely not their main channel of distribution, but it's part of positioning themselves at the high end, because if you go in an Nespresso store, everything looks and feels pretty luxurious. Try to actually, when you get in George Clooney as a person, they put that into the physical stores, right? That's what you get. So, that's the position. Now let's look at what we need. What are the key resources? What are some of the key resources that they need? What did you come up with? Ideas there? What do they need to do this on the front stage? What do they need to have in the backstage? Here, key resources and activities.
George Clooney.
Patents.
Patents, okay, we said that. What else? Clooney, okay, good one. What else?
Suppliers.
Suppliers of coffee, okay. So a couple of aspects here, I just put a few up here. Patents most important, production facilities for the pods, that's what they do themselves. Coffee, of course, but then one aspect that you didn't mention is they need to develop and own the distribution channels. Without that, it's very costly to develop. They could not build what you have on the right-hand side, okay? Key activities, pretty straightforward, production of pods, business to consumer distribution. That's very different from Nestlé, what Nestlé was doing until then. They were sending pallets to retail stores, okay? Now they're sending to individual households. Marketing, George Clooney obviously, and then working with coffee machine manufacturers and coffee growers. Cost structure, straightforward, if we just extrapolate from here, production, business to consumer distribution, and marketing. So the entire business model on one slide. And now you could start changing, and if we would look at it over a timeline, you would see that they didn't immediately start with Nespresso.com and Nespresso stores, but it evolved. But the basic business model is the same, okay? Now, why did I choose Nespresso? A simple reason. Because the product, the machine in the pods, was the same when they started than what they have now. But when they started out, Nespresso almost went bankrupt. Because the first business model for exactly the same product didn't work. How did that look? I'll keep it simple. They wanted to, in a joint venture, sell the Nespresso system through the joint venture with the machine manufacturer, which basically means the sales force of the machine manufacturers. They wanted to sell that system to offices, to companies. Okay, they thought that's where the market is. And they went into a joint venture, formal agreement with machine manufacturers. That didn't work. First element that didn't work, hey, these guys were not interested. And these guys in the sales force, they couldn't give less. They didn't care about just selling another machine. So that business model didn't work. And the only reason that Nespresso went on is because the board decided, hey, we produce so many machines, we better try at least something else. So they moved the current CEO, who was the inventor of the system, the technology inventor. They moved him gently to another place, in the invention field more. He's a very nice guy, but probably, let me be careful here, everything's on camera, but not the same. He just couldn't figure out the right business model. So they brought in a guy from fast-moving consumer goods who invented the new business model. And that's the one that took off, okay? So, now Nespresso or Nestlé is even going further. They have another machine with a different business model for cappuccino. And the last invention, I don't know if you looked at the press, maybe you've seen this. This basically turns the upcoming fathers in the room into perfect fathers. Who's gonna be a father, is a father soon, or was just a father recently? Okay? It's sometimes a pain to make this baby formula, right? Without, and you prefer if your wife or girlfriend or, she does it. But here with this system, you're going to say, I'll do it, because in 30 seconds, you put your pot in the machine, you press a button, and out comes the perfect formula for your baby. It's going to turn you into the perfect husband and father. Okay? But basically, they're building a portfolio of different business models. So they're moving away from product innovation to business models. So, now let me get you to work, and now I need the Altos team to help me for a second. Anybody from Altos here? Can we have the canvases? Sure. Okay? Yeah, great. So what I want you to do now is to get you to work a little bit, and then we're going to slowly wrap up with the point 2 and 3. But I want you to use the canvas with your seat neighbor and make sure that your seat neighbor is not from the same company. Let's continue together. So how did it go? Most of you I saw already know the business model canvas. Was this easy, pretty straightforward? Okay. The point here is that we move out of the world of blah, blah, blah towards something where we use a visual artifact to get a better and clearer communication. So basically, we're leaving this behind us, and we're moving towards something that looks more like this. So I did this drawing in the same airplane travel there, where you get a team of people to discuss what they will put up here and what they won't put up here, and there will be a negotiation for every post-it note that goes up there. And I've done this with very, very senior management teams around the world and with startups. And already for the existing business model, this takes a minimum of 1 hour when you work with a team, and it can go all the way to a full day for the existing business model, not even talking about new business models. Okay? But what you get at the end is something that's very clear that everybody can buy into. Okay? So that's a pretty substantial cognitive jump in terms of clarity. Particularly also when you implement a business model to communicate it to the people who you're working with or to the investors. Okay? So, now let's move to the next point, which is how do we come up with innovative business models? How do we design innovative business models? And this is something that we still have a pretty hard time to do in businesses. So, when I say design, I don't mean design just as form. It's not about putting lipstick on the pig. It's about the design process. To work more like architects, that's a design profession, or to work more like product designers. Because, frankly, that's what they do every day. The business of designers is to create stuff, most often new stuff, every day. So guess what? They have processes and methods to do that. So in business, we should learn from those processes, and if you have a design education, you should take those and design your business model. So who has a design background in the room? Okay. So there are a couple of things that you learn at design school, and you probably don't apply them when it comes to business. So let's look at one example of design thinking. Frank Gehry. Frank Gehry, iconic architect, well known throughout the world. One of his iconic buildings, of the many he's done, is the Guggenheim Museum. Okay, the Guggenheim Museum is pretty special in the sense that the mayor brought Frank Gehry and his team in the city to transform the city, because in his words he said it's one of the ugliest cities in Spain, technically in the Basque country. So this one building should transform the city. It's a pretty substantial task. And Frank Gehry and his team came up with a building that was so new in terms of architectural design that they had to invent professions to make this building. It was pushing the boundaries so much. Now, when Frank Gehry and his team attack a task like this, it's not heavenly intuition raining down on them or pure design genius. There's a bit of that, but that's a lot of a myth also. There's a pretty structured process behind that, and that's a design process. And the one thing that I want you to keep in mind here, the easiest thing to do, but we still pretty big shift, is to work more in terms of prototypes. Because Frank Gehry and his team, they make many different prototypes, different types of prototypes, before they even choose how the final building will look. So they make very different alternatives, they make different models, different scales, different materials, to test different alternatives. Very different types of buildings. And only if after a while, when they say, they call this when the design matures, will they pick a direction. Now in companies, and also in startups, what we often do is the contrary of this. We fall in love with ideas very early, and we execute on them as quick as we can. That's a bad idea. Have you ever seen an architect execute on his first design sketch? Would you trust a building that's made by an architect using the same kind of tools that we use in business to build businesses? They have structured processes to make buildings, And in entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship, we still don't have very many of those tools, so we need to use more of these tools, okay? Because it's only after going through a process like this, like prototyping, that they will decide what kind of building they're going to build. Does that make sense? Does that resonate? Okay? So, it's more about the search for the right business model before running out there and executing and wasting money. Because if you start building, there's no way back. How many of you have been in a project where you started to execute pretty quickly, and all of a sudden somebody in the team says, this doesn't feel entirely right. Maybe we should do things differently. Then somebody else says, yeah, I know, but I mean, you know, we're so far, there's just no way back. Sound familiar? Okay? Well, that's what you just, usually in plain English, you call wasting money. Because everybody knows that continuing to execute will just run you in a wall. But we still do it. Because we build too quickly. And once we're in that process, well, at one point when we fail, we'll say, okay, we're going to try something new, but you just wasted a lot of money. What you actually want to do is you want to test and fail early before building, okay? That's what we do in design and what we do in architecture. Now, what does that mean? It's a bit of intellectual blah, blah, blah. Now, what does that mean for us when it comes to business models? It means we shouldn't fall in love with our first sketch, our first design. We should take the time, just like architects, to sketch out multiple business model alternatives. Many, many. Now, is that time consuming? Depends. What architects and other designers do is they work with rough sketches. They're not going to spend an entire day on one sketch, or in our case on one business model. You want to do some of these business model sketches in 10 minutes, in 15 minutes. But you do want to think through different alternatives. Hey, what if I gave away my product for free? What if I sold it for €1 million? What if I built a business model with no fixed costs, only variable costs? What if I found a business model in where my competitor becomes my ally? So thinking through alternatives like that will lead us to better business models, and I'll guarantee you will come up with something more powerful than if you go too quickly towards choosing your design. Because that's what good designers do to come up with good stuff. Because that's the process of creating stuff. Does that resonate? Make sense? Okay? So that allows you to avoid things like we've seen with Nespresso, where you go for the first business model that doesn't work. Okay? We'll see how testing plays into this as well. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, using a tool like the Canvas, getting a team together, and sketching out business model alternatives. If you have a product or technology, sketch out 5, 10 different business models in an afternoon or in an hour. If you have a particular customer issue that you see, sketch out 5 business models that address that customer issue, okay? Now, we're going to work a little bit on a case study, very quick one. And it's a very basic industry. It's actually a Finnish example, so some of you might know it. And I like it quite a bit. So, this is actually now more years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I was in Mexico, giving a talk like this, in a city called Guadalajara. And there were people from León, the neighboring city, and there's a big leather industry there. So they make stuff like this, shoes, leather boots, okay? And they have a big issue, because their products are not competitive anymore compared to China, low-cost manufacturing. So after the talk, they came to me and they said, Alex, you know, we have an issue. How should we change our business model? What should we do? I said, here's a process. Go ahead, prototype, fail quickly, you know, try it out. But to be very honest, at that point, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was not sure if you could come up with an innovative business model in shoe manufacturing. I just wasn't sure. I thought it's so basic that it's hard to reinvent. Then 2 or 3 years ago, after I gave a talk, there was a guy after me who presented a Finnish company called Pomarfin. Anybody know Pomarfin? Okay. Shoe manufacturer, right? Anybody from Pomarfin in here? Now, they had the same issue, that their business model, let's keep it simple, which is about selling mass market shoes through retail partners to the mass shoe market, which means manufacturing shoes, main cost, business to business logistics, shipping those pallets to the retailers, and earning money by selling through a sales force to the retail partners who will buy the shoes from you and pay you for that. That's a basic manufacturing business model, right? That was their business model. They had a problem. Same as the Mexican people, right? This is their problem. Now it's more Vietnam, or Cambodia, or Laos, rather than China. So Pomarfin came up with something. I'm going to get you to work on this. There's no such thing as a free beer. You got to earn it all. They invented a technology that would allow you to buy the perfect fit shoe. So who of you has ever had shoes that hurt? Okay. Who hasn't ever? Okay, nobody, doesn't exist. Now, have you ever noticed that the better the shoes look, the more they hurt? There's a correlation there, right? So this is the problem that they tackled. They wanted to make good shoes that actually don't hurt, that perfectly fit, because you might know, our feet are not the same. The left foot or the right foot is usually a bit smaller than the other foot, and they have different shapes, right? So they came up with the technology. They worked with another partner, Corpus E, that made them a box where you basically put your foot inside, and then a scanner goes around the foot, bzzz, and it spits out literally your digital footprint, so you can make a perfect fit shoe. Okay, that's the technology. Now, is that going to save them from the low-cost manufacturing countries? Well, probably not. Question to you is, well, you know the other model, very basic manufacturing model. I gave you the technology that they invented, which works. So no need to reinvent the technology. Question to you, I saw many hands go up when I asked who is an entrepreneur. Question to you entrepreneurs is, how would you use this technology, this foot scanning technology, to change the business model to make them competitive again? So what I want you to brainstorm on is as many business model ideas as possible, not canvases, business model ideas that could help Pomarfin become competitive again through business model innovation by using this foot scanning technology. Now, we got to make this a bit competitive, so it's a buzz group, but you work on this question individually for 2 minutes. And you need to generate as many possible business model ideas and alternatives as possible for the case I just gave you. And the most innovative person in the room is going to win a free business model generation book, and I'll obviously sign it as well. Okay? So, question is, how could Pomarfin use foot scanning technology to become competitive again? I'm starting the timer now. Generate as many answers as possible for 2 minutes. Let's go. Total silence, please. 2, 1. Please take your pen away. No more answers now. Okay? And I want to know, how many ideas? 5. Who can beat 5 ideas? 8 ideas. Who can beat 8 ideas? Anybody who can beat 8 ideas? 10 ideas. The most, 11 ideas. 13 ideas. Latif, my son, how many? He's just holding his hands up. 20? Okay, 13 ideas. What's your name?
Petri.
Petri is the most creative person in the room. He wins a business model generation book. Excellent. Okay, perfect. Just come up and get it. Now, this is really important because what you want to do is generate different possible business model alternatives before you go for one. And you want to figure out which one could be the best one, okay? Now let's look at Pomar's design decision. Basically, for any product innovation, technology innovation, or for every customer problem, you can come up with several business models. But it takes some energy to come up with the ideas, and then not discuss the ideas. That's a big error. But to actually prototype them quickly, take an idea, or take 3 ideas, prototype them with a canvas, 15 minutes each, and then compare them. If you just discuss the ideas, you wasted your time, because you cannot discuss just an idea. What you want to discuss is the business model prototype and the comparison between them. Now let's look at what Pomar did. Their design decision was to create a new brand. Initially it was called the Left Foot Company, and then they turned the name into the Left Shoe Company. Okay? Created a new brand. But they had many different alternatives. They could have stopped manufacturing shoes altogether and just scanning feet and selling off the scans, right? That could have been an idea. Anybody come up with that? Okay? So there are many different possibilities. They chose one. Is this the best one? Well, it's the one that fit their needs best, because every business model has a certain amount of risk, a certain amount of potential. You want to figure out which one is the best for your specific goals. So they chose the Left Shoe Company, and this is how they transformed the business model. Now, I don't know how it looks exactly right now, but this is how it looked until about a year ago. So they said, well, we're going to sell personalized shoes through their own stores and through retail stores to a specific customer segment. Now, who do you think they are selling to? Who would be interested in personal fit shoes? What do you think is the, yeah? What would your guess be? Who do they sell to? You got one? Okay. So, you're probably high-end business segment, and you're a man. That's who they sell to, okay? They don't sell to women, at least for a very long time. I don't know if switched them off. Now, why would that be? They don't have to fit, but they need to look good, okay? Okay. It actually goes in the same cliche direction. Let's make a test here. Who of the women in the room like shopping for shoes? Honestly, come on. Okay? Most of the women here. Now, who of the men really likes shopping for shoes? Okay, some coming out here, but most of you don't like shopping for shoes. Now, what's the dream of every man? To get good-looking shoes. It's still our dream, right? But they fit, because we're not willing to wear shoes that look good that don't fit. But we don't like going to shoe stores, isn't it? We don't like buying shoes. So our dream is, hey, what if somebody made the perfect fit shoe? We could go to a store, to a retail partner, get our foot scanned once, and then the footprint is online. We never go back to a shoe store. We always get them through the internet. And that's where we buy them. Okay? So you go to a shoe store once, so you get a perfect fit shoe again and again and again. Sounds good, huh? I see some people nodding there. Now, there's a little bit of an issue here in the business model, which is, well, their own stores and their retail partners. What's the problem with that? Is this a good idea? What's the problem here?
Hard to get partners.
Limited reach could be one. There's a bigger issue. Cost, building their own stores. Okay, but they decided to build their own stores because basically they need little space to put a screen, a scanner. They don't need any warehouse, nothing, because you basically you design the shoes and you get them delivered. There's another issue here. Who are there? Yeah. The retail partners need an incentive to scan the shoes and sell them, because once you scan your feet, you're actually never going to go back to retail, right? You're going to go to the web. There's another one is, if you set up your own stores, but you're selling to retail, what did you just start doing?
We're competing.
You're competing with your own customers, right? So that's one of the reasons why they created their own brand. But still, they wanted to have a more harmonized model. So what they did is they asked themselves, well, how could we provide an incentive to retailers? So let's say, let's go over here. You are managing a shoe retail chain throughout the Nordics. And I come to you and I say, hey, look, we have this great machine that allows men to scan their feet and then they can buy shoes online from my store. So I want to get you to scan feet. Okay, until now he's going to say, what does this guy want? They're never going to come back to my store. But you know what? Every time you scan a foot, and that person, even if he never comes back, every time that person buys a shoe from my online store, I'm going to sit and give you a royalty for the shoe that has been sold until the end of my days as a company. So all you need to do is scan a foot once, and then you earn money for doing nothing until the end of your days. And you don't like those men anyways, right? Those business people who are coming in and want these shoes and so on. And you don't have the hassle of inventory and so on, right? So it's a pretty interesting value proposition which would allow them to scale quicker than if they only built their own stores, particularly in countries far away from Finland, like Singapore and so on, okay? Now, it also means that the business model changes a bit. There's more, it becomes more of an IT company. There's more business to consumer logistics, similar to Nespresso. And they have to adapt their production facilities. But what was pretty interesting to learn is that this actually allowed them to fill excess capacity through these new personalized shoes. So that's what they did at Pomarfin with this new brand. So I'm going to stop with the last point. We talked a lot about business model design, and this will introduce Steve Blank, who is going to come here. I don't know if you remember the dates, but you'll mention the website again. This is something I learned from Steve, who became a good friend. He was an entrepreneur, built a couple of companies, sold his last one successfully. He considers himself retired, and now teaches at Stanford and Berkeley and Columbia. And he teaches how you can test business models, and that's extremely relevant. Because if you don't do that, this is what's going to happen. So, has anybody of you seen a device like this? You know what that is? No, it's not a Nokia phone.
It's an early model of Chumbly.
No, it's a device called Flow TV. Okay? Something like this, where you can watch TV throughout the United States. You can't make a phone call, you can't do anything else than just watch TV. Okay? But there's a company that found this a great idea. So they started building the business model. So I don't know the case very well. I learned about it in the FT, Financial Times. There was a small article a couple months back saying Flow TV started phasing out their existing customers who subscribed to Flow TV. They're closing down. It didn't work. And they also wrote how much the company lost in the process. How much do you think, how much money did they spend building Flow TV? What will your guess be? Approximate? Guess? Let's go.
120 million.
$120 million, okay? $800 million. That's a lot of money to fail, okay? There's some that have done better, like Iridium. They planted something like 4.5 billion, but that's a pretty substantial sum. Now, my assumption would be that they just failed to test the business model before starting to build this stuff. The good thing for them is, because it's Qualcomm behind the company, behind Flow TV, they were lucky. Because basically, when they closed down, they could sell off the Spectrum license that they had to buy in the beginning, and then increased in value. They could sell that for about $1.2 billion. But I'm not sure if that's the kind of business you want to run. Hey, you know, let's see. So how do you get around that? Well, basically, something I learned from Steve, well, if you do this, if you figure out a business model with the smartest people in the room, with the smartest business coaches, with the smartest investors, at the end of the day, all you have is a series of guesses, hypotheses. And if you fail to test your guesses at this stage, you're going to get Flow TV. You might not lose 800 million because you don't have them, but I can assure you, once you lost 5-6 million, No investor is going to allow you to pivot your business model to explore a new one. They're going to close you down, they might give you money to create a new business model, but basically what you want to do is you want to search for the right business model before spending too much, okay? Now how could you do that? Well, learn from Steve Blank's work. Who's read Steve Blank's book? 4 Steps to the Epiphany. Who's read it from cover to cover? Think. One person in the world exists who has done that, and my son, of course. He always. You learned at school, right? Putting my hand up. Great, Matthew. So he talks about how you test business models, and the basic thing is very simple, but we don't do it often enough. It's this idea of getting out of the building and testing your business model assumptions as quickly as possible before building it. So testing each hypothesis, each guess, with customers, with channel partners, and so on. Now, how could you do that? An interesting way to do that, this is something we're working on together with Steve. We want to bring out a booklet that describes this joint process, our method and his method. So you could look at this in terms of layers. You could say, okay, we designed a business model, okay? This is your best shot at how the business model should look, but you know that it's just a series of guesses. So the next layer you're going to do is you're going to take every business model building block and you're going to say, well, what are the underlying business model assumptions? Pricing assumptions, customer needs assumptions. You're saying this is a very important problem for customers, but maybe that's just what you think. You need to go test that. So you single out the most important hypothesis that have to be true for your business model to work. So that people want to watch TV while they're on the metro going to work. Turns out people were not interested in flow TV, right? They didn't even test that assumption. But now, making those assumptions explicit is not enough. Here's where I'm going to stop after this idea. What you really want to do is for each assumption, for the most important assumptions, you want to design a test layer. For you as a company to test if that assumption is true or not. So, I'll give you one example from my world. I have a software company that we're building. And we have a small product out there, a minimal viable product that is leading us towards a bigger product. And that's a business model tool. We call it the Business Model Toolbox that you can find on the App Store of Apple that will allow you to design and test business models with some ballpark figures. Now, our biggest issue was, what's the price for a business model toolbox that you sell on the App Store? With $3, we could not make an application like that because it's very expensive to develop on the iOS platform. If you're a mass market with millions of customers, it's different. But this is not a million of customer market, right? So we needed to figure out the price point. We thought $29 would be the right price. But hey, on the App Store, that's a pretty high price, right? So if we would just stick with our best guess, that wouldn't be very good. So our assumption was $29 could make our business model work. So we set up a landing page before building this product where people could come sign up with their email and they would get notified once we launched the product. So they would just give their email to be notified. Once they signed up their email, we would ask them 3 questions. And one of the questions was, would you pay $100 for this tool on the App Store? Now, why would we ask for $100 if we were trying to figure out $29? What would your guess be? Okay. If you put the highest possible where you think people are going to say, no, they're going to give you their highest price. They're going to say, you're freaking nuts, but I'll pay $50. So we figured out that actually a couple would pay $100, a couple would pay $50, but approximately 50% would pay $29. And what I figured out is that many of the other 50% who wouldn't pay $29, some of them wanted to influence our pricing. So I thought, hey, great, we know how to test business models, or pricing. So we explained this to a person who does this professionally. Last point, he said, well, you didn't test anything. You just asked them what they would pay. But proof is if they do show that they will pay. I said, well, how can you do that? We didn't have the product. said, well, it doesn't matter. You put a button there where if they click on it, they confirm that they're going to pay $100, $50, or $29. When they click to pay, that's when you know that they really are going to pay. Everything else is just blah, blah, blah. Okay? Now, fortunate enough for us, it was pretty true. People are paying $29 because they see the value in it. But this is just a minimal viable product that we're using to test, to build something more substantial, which is an enterprise application. But it already solves a real problem for which people are willing to pay. That's the iPad app. You can find it, some description of it on our website where you get 70 pages of the book, businessmodelgeneration.com/toolbox. Since we're a bit out of time, I won't do a demo because all of you are thirsty and hungry. I think there's something that's waiting for you. So I will stop here, but open the floor to questions. Do we have time for questions? And thank you very much for your attention so late in the day. Thanks a lot.